Hi everyone, well I'm back again for yet another demonstration. I'm going to do chrysanthemum this time. I haven't finished the chrysanthemum off to show you this time because I've got them all at different stages, so I've got one near the end ready to do, so let's get on with it. So as you can see, I've got some here at different stages. To start off with, these are the cutters that I'm using. These are from FMM and they come in a set of 5 different sizes, and then you've also got this little gadget here. This gadget, when you put your cutters together, that goes through the middle like that and they all click onto that, and that keeps them all together. But also it's used for pushing your petals out of the cutter if they get stuck in there. So you've got a thin end and then you've got a thicker end for the larger cutters. So I'm just going to put that to one side for the minute. Get rid of the cutters, and first of all, because this is a one wire flower, you need to make your centre and dry that, which I've already got one ready here, already dry, so we'll just pop that to one side. What you need to do is to start off by bending your wire over. Now you can do this with a pair of these long nose pliers, which I've got here, and what I'm going to do is get hold of that like that, and then I'm going to twist that round like that, as far as you can get it. So you've got a flat hook on the top, and just flatten that down a little bit onto there like that. So you've got a little hook that way on the top of it like that, if you can see what I've done there. Right, so it doesn't matter what colour your paste is for this, because you're going to cover it anyway. So I've got some of my colours at the top, I'm going to use some of that. I did do that one in white when I made all the other centres, but so you need a small ball of paste, and you've got to bear in mind when you make it that when you cut it out, that the centre of that is going to fit in the centre of there, so your petals overlap mostly. So start off with your ball of paste, just squash that down into a mint imperial. Usually better if you've got something to compare it with, isn't it? Then get your wire and press that into your paste, and if you put it on a flat surface, and then just bring your paste up over the top of it like that. And then if you get a small ball tool, and then just push that down into the centre to make a little hollow in the centre like that. Okay, then set that to one side to dry. Once that's dry, which I've got one here, and just put that paste to one side, we're going to add the pollen. Again, for those that haven't watched my videos before, I make my own pollen. I did show it in the I'm not sure whether it was the last video that I did. No, not the last video, the one before. When I did the calla lilies, that was it. I always make my own pollen because it costs you pennies to make it. So all you need is some ground rice or semolina into a pot like this that you can keep it in. Add the colour you want for your pollen into the container. Give it a good shake with the lid on, of course, and then you've got your pollen, and that's how it's commercially made. So there's no point in you spending £2 odd on a pot of that when you can make it for pennies. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue all over the top and round the side with the glue. Make sure you get it all the way around, because if you've got any dried parts, your pollen's not going to stick, and you end up with a light coloured part that you don't want to see. Into your pollen, roll that around in the pollen like that, tap the excess off, And there we are, that's your centre covered with your pollen. So I've done it part way down the side, not too far, because you don't want under here any pollen, because you need your petals to stick to that. So just the top part. Put that to one side, and then we'll get rid of that out of the way. I'm just going to give this a wipe over in case I've got any bits of pollen on there, because we don't want that getting into the paste that we're going to do. So we'll just give that brush over like that. So if you've got any colour on here, it spreads like hell. If you don't, get rid of it off your board. Whoops. Keep those in order. Right, just pop those over there. Another thing you might need if you have got them is these cell formers. If you haven't got one, just make it with some foil like I've done there. The only problem with that is that it's going to take longer to dry, because it's not going to dry from underneath, it'll only dry from the top, so it will take longer to dry, but I'll show you a way around that. So we'll just pop that over to one side. I also got some cutters for making some leaves. I'm not going to do these again, because I do leaves in every video that I do, but I've got some chrysanthemum leaves here that I've made, and for that I got this cutter I found on the internet, and this varnish. I didn't particularly like the look of this varnish when it came. I thought it looked a bit artificial, but the after effect is actually quite nice when they're done. So it's always worth having a look at them, unless you're spending a lot of money on them, which the ones that are made from botanical plants, so they're actually made from the plant or the leaf or whatever you're doing. You will spend a lot of money on them. This wasn't an expensive one, so it didn't matter if it didn't suit the purpose, because I hadn't spent a lot of money on it. But there we are. So there's 3 sizes in that. I've done 3 sizes there, so these are the 3 sizes that I've done. And then I've wired those together to make a sprig that I'm going to put to the side. They don't actually grow like that on the flower, but when you're doing a spray to go on a cake, you need to use artistic license, so do it whichever way is going to look right in the spray that you're doing. Right, onto the petals now. As you can see by this one here that I've done so far, this only wants the back on it. I've started off with the darker colour in the centre and then worked out to a lighter colour. So what I've done with these cutters is I've started off with the darkest colour, that one. Make sure you season your board with some Trex or Flora white vegetable fat, for those that are not in the UK and don't have these makes about. And knead your paste so it's nice and soft, ready to work. Now when you're doing these small ones, you need to get your paste really fine, because they're so tiny you can't work those as much as you can the larger petals. So you need to make sure you get your paste really thin for the centre ones. You can go a little bit thicker with the outer ones, because they're the ones that are in more danger of breaking off if they get caught, where the centre ones are going to be covered with all the outer petals, if that makes sense. Right, so once you've rolled your paste out, the best thing to do now is to get a little bit of fat on your cutters, and this is like using patchwork cutters. If you've ever used them, get some white fat on your fingers and rub it over your cutter. So we'll cut out 2 pieces, so plenty of pressure on there, flick it off. Oops, I went over the other side of there. Onto your paste, give it plenty of pressure, really good hard press, and then flick that off. Now that one's going to stick. No, it isn't. I thought it was going to stick in the cutter, but it hasn't done. Now you just have to be careful when you're getting these out, because they're very narrow at the bottom of the petals there. So what I prefer to do is I have a tool here. It's actually a dentist tool, I believe. with a blade on one end and a little cup on the other end. I've got a couple of dental tools that I use for things like this. So what I do is get the point right into the bottom of the petal and pull the paste out. This is a time consuming bit. For anybody that's watching this that doesn't do sugar flowers and are thinking about getting married, and they get quoted high prices for the wedding cakes, especially when you want sugar flowers on them, this is what you're paying for. The time that it takes us to do these things. They can't be done overnight. They have to be done in advance because we can't do them last minute like the cakes that we have nowadays. And like any job, we have to charge by the hour. And strictly speaking, the amount that we charge for the hour nowadays is basically practically minimum wage. So the more experienced somebody is and the better they are at doing the job, then the more it's going to cost. There we are. So we've got that cut away. I've got some little bits in the centre, but I'm not bothered about that because they're not going to be seen, because they're going to be covered over. Right, so the next part is to get those now. Oops, lost a petal. Never mind. I'll show you what to do with that if you do lose one. Like I keep saying to people, you know, I never cover up any of my mistakes, because if something goes wrong, it's better that I show you how to put it right. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to pop that on there. It's going to be very slightly shorter than the other petals, and just give it a press on like that so it's back in place again. Just keep an eye on that when you're thinning your edges, but for these it doesn't matter so much. We're not going to thin the edges because they're too small. We'll just pop that away. And then you want your small ball tool again, and then from the top bring it down and curve it in like that, because these are going to curve over the centre. That's the one that I just... no, it isn't the one I repaired, is it? Yes it is, yeah, that's the one I repaired, so that's stayed on. There we are. So that's one, then the other one. If one flops over like that, just pop it back into place. They do sometimes do that when you're curving them back. They are very tiny and fiddly. It's not a flower I would recommend doing too often to put on cakes because of the length of time it takes to do it. But I thought I'd show you this one from a skill point of view. Plus the fact as well, there are a lot of things that can go wrong with this. And this is the reason I haven't done one ready to show you, is because if things go wrong, they go wrong, and I leave it in the video, I don't take it out. I think it's only fair for you to see that no matter how long you've been doing it, as I keep repeating myself, things can go wrong, and things do go wrong for us. So I'm going to lay that on top of the other one, like that. So try and get your petals in between the previous layer, like that. So some more glue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the back of this as well to make sure that it's well and truly stuck on there. And then that goes into the middle like that. Bring your petals up over the top of the flower, bring it down upside down, and then just bring your petals down and just curve them in over the centre like that. If you can see what I've done there. Right, so I'm going to leave that upside down now for those to stay in place while I go on to the next layer. And I have got one with the centrepiece done already. I've gone a bit offside because my wire was a bit offside on that, but don't worry about that because that's the centre of the flower anyway. So what I've done is I've done the same thing as I do when I'm doing roses, and I've gone down a shade by adding some white into the paste, which will be that one. Leave that back in there, so I don't need that one anymore. Depends what colour you're using as to how far down you go with your colours. Right, so I've put that to one side, that small cutter. The next cutter I'm going to go on to is that one, which is the next size up. Again, a little bit of white fat on my board. I just need to make sure they're not going to move around. You don't need to put loads on, just enough so that your paste stays in place. You're not going to move it around. Again, you can go quite thin with this one because it's going to be in the centre, unless you're going to leave it as a bud. But because they're quite small, if you get your paste too thick, they won't come out. You'll find more difficulty with them and more chance of breaking petals off at the stage when it's still soft. But like I've just shown you on that other one, if a petal does come off, you can fix it. Right, so on to the next side. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of white fat on my hands and go over the petals like that. It's just so that the petals come out of the cutter a lot easier. So one, just get your nail underneath and flick it off. If it says it, this one's going to say, no it isn't. Oh, it's come out. There we are. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It just depends, but if one stays in the cutter, then I'll show you what to do if that happens. And we've got one here that's... Now, if you find that's happening and it's staying in the cutter, what I would do, because it might be that you haven't cut it deep enough, you cut your paste off like that, take that paste and turn it over, and then just run your fingers over the cutter like that, just to make sure it's cut right through. Take it right down to the bottom, and then all your bits of paste all come away then, like that. This one I'm going to go back to the other method where I've taken it out from the centre like that. When it comes to thinning edges, I don't start thinning the edges until I get onto the bigger ones. These first two layers are too narrow to start going around trying to do your edges and that. So you'll notice that I haven't done that with these, because when you pull your ball tool down the centre, that thins all the petal out. So we'll get that and put that onto the board, onto my pad. Right, now then this one, this is where we come onto this little tool we've got here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pad there and then hold the daisy cutter over it. We want the narrow end, which is that one. And then you just go in like this and just push them out from the edge of the petals, edge of the cutter. Just go around it like that. Rather than using a knife or a blade or anything like that, you know, because you can spoil your petals. So that's why they make this little tool to go with it. Just makes life an awful lot easier to get your cutters out, your petals out, and then go in the centre, just go onto the thick end and just gently push that down like that. Get it near to your pad so that when it drops out, drop straight down onto your pad like that. Right, so then back to your ball tool. I'm using the small one. I've got the set of 3 with the 3 different sizes. That's the medium one. Then I've got a bigger one than that I very rarely use unless you're doing something really big. So with the large end of the smaller ball tool, then just start curving your petals in. Again, just try and keep it in the centre. Like that. Just pop that over there onto the second one. I should have some background music here, shouldn't I? I can in my editing suite put some background music on, but I haven't tried that yet. And I'm just thinking, if I'm doing a long video, it's have a lot to do like this, might be a good idea. What do you say? Put a comment in the comments section and let me know about that. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I upload a new one, which as I say, I try and do a new one every week. So that goes into the centre of there like that. So your petals go in between the others. And again, like we did with the last one, I have got one that's dry here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue around the base of that one, rather than doing it in the centre of there. And bring that up like that. And then bring your petals over. Like that. That's how they're going to go. Okay. And then I'm going to bend that and leave it upside down. All I've done is I've hooked it on the side of a board here. Let me just bring it round so you can see what I've done. I've got a board there with them hung on the edge, so you can see what I've done there. Okay. So I'm going to start adding the white paste to it now so that you can see how I did the colour. So you want the same amount of white paste as you've got, whatever colour you're using, for your next layer. So mix that together. As I've probably said in some of my videos before, the best way to see if you've mixed your colour all the way through, whether it's the first colour you're putting in or whether you're adding white into a colour or whatever, then just cut your paste in half and see if it's the same colour all the way through. If it's streaky, then obviously you need it a little bit more. I'll just get that out of the way because we've used that cutter. We're onto that one now. Pop that up there. So what you would do is if you roll it in a ball like that, or into a sausage, whichever, that's not gone all the way through. I can see that there. Just look inside and there's a bit of darker colour there on the edge, so we're going to need that again to get that to disappear into the rest of it, so you get the colour all the way through. The way I find it is if you roll it in a sausage and keep folding it over and rolling, you will get the colour all the way through. I'm not going to use all that, so I'm just going to take some of that off there for the time being. So I'm going to add a little bit more white paste onto my board. Like that. And roll your paste out. Get your cutter again, bit of white fat over your cutter. You don't want loads on, we don't want to clog it with it, you just want it to be just a little bit greasy. Give it a really good press. Flick it off. And as I said, we're going to do 2 of each of these cutters, because there's a lot of petals on a chrysanthemum. And again, with the point of my little tool, just take that middle bit out. Just be careful when you get to the end, you don't stretch the petals, because that can pull it away from here and tear away if you're not careful. So just watch that bit. If you find that it looks as though it's going to stretch, just get around the end and just go in and pull the end away like that, just to make sure you don't stretch it. Particularly on your last one that you're taking out, you can find that, because there's no support on the other side. You've only got support on one side. Not so bad with these petals, because you've got paste on either side of the petals, if that makes sense. I have to keep saying that because I never know whether it makes sense to you. So as I say, that's what the comment... Oh, I pulled a petal away there. Look, you see, I've done it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and cut that one down there with this blade, and just have to be careful with that one. See what I mean about mistakes? And I mean, the thing is, I mean, if you're not in a good mood and you're not in the right frame of mind, don't attempt anything like this, because you need patience. Very satisfying when you've done them, but if you're not in the right frame of mind, things will go wrong. It's the same with anything that you do, really, especially when it's creative. That's when mistakes are made. So just make sure at the time that you're able to concentrate. That needs a bit cutting at the top there, that's it. Same with that one. Right, we'll take that paste away, like that. Now then, that petal we've got there, just pop that on there, and just... It is slightly shorter than the others, but by the time you get all your petals in, nobody's going to be able to see that, because nobody's going to go in and check every petal, are they? If they do, there must be a masochist. No normal human being would do that, would they? But there again, you can never tell. If it's a competition, it's a different thing. Right, so get that underneath there. This is where these little palette knives come in handy for this sort of job. Lay it onto your pad. Oh, I pulled it off again. Is that the same one? No, it's another one. Right, so I'll get that in front of me so I can see what I'm doing. Just press that one in there. Like that. That looks a bit suspect on the end, does that one there? There we are. As they get bigger, they are a bit more difficult to handle, because your petals are a lot longer, so they tend to flag about a little bit more. I'm going to use a slightly bigger ball tool this time to do the petals, so that it covers the whole of the petal, so you're thinning the edge as well as curling down the middle. Don't be frightened of putting some pressure onto it to get it to curl up. If you're too dainty with it, it won't curl enough. In actual fact, the way that that's curled is actually not quite as curly as the actual flowers that I had pictures of that I looked at before I did this, because some of them are really curly, but sometimes that's difficult to do in sugar. You know, we have to give nature a helping hand, as I've said before, with some things, but sometimes you just have to change things slightly in order for it to work. Like I've said before, if leaves are flat, you need to give them a bit of movement, otherwise they just don't look lifelike. There we are. So again, glue on there. At points like this you can actually leave your paste out a little bit to stiffen up a little before you do this, so they don't flop around quite as much, as long as you don't leave it too long. There we are. When your glue's there you can slide it around, then you can adjust your petals. There we are. That one wants to come over there. No, it doesn't. That wants to go in there. That wants to go in there. There we are. Now I've already got one dried that's done the previous layer that I've just done there, so just put some glue in the centre there. Like that. You could, if you wanted, to go a little way up your petals with some glue if you feel safer doing that, to ensure that they stay in place. But we do want them to open out a little bit, so onto there like that, over. And then I'm just going to press down at the bottom this time. I'm not going to pull the petals in too much because I want them to open out a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to let them fall naturally into place. So I bend that over and that can go on there like that. And leave that to dry. I've already got one at that level, so we'll just get rid of that. Onto the next layer, which is the next larger one. So again, add some white paste into that. Oops. If I was doing this live with one of my classes at college, then obviously students will be firing questions at me while I'm doing this, so it's a lot easier to answer something while you're doing it, whereas unfortunately on YouTube and Facebook, I do post some of the videos on Facebook as well, you have to send me a message in order to be able to ask the question. But I do go online quite a lot. My YouTube channel, I have the page up all the time, so if I'm there at my computer and a question comes up, I can answer it straight away. But I don't sit and stare at it all day because I've got other things to do. It depends what I'm doing. Could be that I'm working upstairs getting ready for another video, or washing up, or doing a cake for somebody, or whatever else I'm doing. But I will always try and get back as soon as I can, and I do check my emails and everything a number of times a day. So there we are. By the way, the colour that I used here for this, I forgot to tell you, is paprika from Sugar Flare, which is also used for a skin tone. If you're doing modelling, if you're doing figures and you're doing the face and hands and things like that, it's this colour. But obviously you don't need as much in if you're going to do that, depending on the skin tone that you're trying to achieve. So again, a bit of white paint fat on the board. I don't always put as much white fat on, but it just depends what you're doing. But these are quite fiddly, so I am putting a little bit more than I would normally put on, because I definitely want this to stay stuck to the board. It's not like cutting rose petals out or anything like that. And you need to roll your paste bigger when you get to this section, because as the cutters are getting big, you need to have enough room to be able to cut out what you need to do. And the best thing to do is to try your cutter on your paste to make sure you've got enough room whilst you're rolling it out, rather than waiting until you've rolled it out and then finding you haven't got enough rolled out to do 2 layers. I'm not rolling it quite as thin this time. I'm going slightly thicker, because on this layer I am going to thin the edge of the petals as well as curling them up. And because the petals have got no support, I didn't put my white fat on there, did I? That's why that stuck. There you are. That's what happens when you don't put your white fat on. It sticks. So this one possibly should be a little bit easier. Sorry about the cough, but I have a chest infection and it makes me cough quite a lot, especially when I'm talking a lot. Oops, there we are. Get that out of the way. Again, go in with your tool and take all the spare bits out. If you find that it's not cut through straight enough, if you've got a blade like this, you can just follow the line down the side of your petal like that and cut it out, and then take it out if you've got any problems like that. But if you've got enough pressure on your cutters, because plastic cutters can be a bit blunter, and especially if you've used it a lot, they're not as sharp as metal ones. But to get a metal cutter to cut out something like this would be very expensive, because the way that the pricing works on cutters, as I know from my supplier that I get my cutters from for college, again, it's not necessarily the amount of material that they use, it's the time it takes them to make them. And something like this is very complicated to make in metal, because they're all made by hand, they're not made by machine, they're not just stamped out like a lot of the plastic ones that come out of moulds and that. I mean, if you're not doing a lot of something or anything like that, then plastic cutters are fine. Pulled another petal off there, look. So we'll just I'll move that back into position in a minute. It's because my paste is a little bit thicker that I haven't probably gone through far enough with some of the petals, so you just have to be aware of that when you're pulling these bits out. Just keep taking any excess off your cutters just to make sure that it doesn't drag, because it can drag if you don't take those little bits off the end there. You can hear the silence in the room, can't you? The concentration here. I'm trying not to make any mistakes because I don't want to have to start all over again. And I'm sure there are probably quite a lot of people that do start again because they want everything to be perfect. But, like I've said before, I think I've always said if you make mistakes, if you don't make mistakes rather, you're not learning anything. So it's a good idea not to cover up the mistakes. If I make a mistake while I'm doing it, I can show you how I can correct it. So that means that when you come to do it, that one wants doing that, that's it. Hopefully things will go a bit better for you. And you've seen how I've put it right. Right, just go to there. So, fortunately, when if your paste is a little bit thicker, as this is, your petals should firm up a little bit quicker and they should be a little bit easier to handle. But I've got one there that looks as though it's going to break off, so I'm going to break that off and replace that one. That's it. Oops. Right, again onto the small end of the middle ball tool, and yeah, that's working. I don't have to do the edges on that. I probably only have to do the edges on the large size. I'm trying to make it as less work for you when you're doing it, if that makes sense, so that it's easy for you. And also where I stuck that petal on, I've run into the centre, so I've made sure I've gone over the join to make sure that that is actually attached without having to add any glue, because if you start adding glue at this stage, then your flowers start getting sticky and things stick where you don't want them to stick. I did try that with some petals when I was doing the first parts where I lost one, and the trouble is it gets sticky on your hands, and your hands stick to things as well, and then they get difficult to handle. So try not to use any glue unless you absolutely have to. If by any chance anything breaks off, and particularly if it's dry, then all you need to do is keep, if you've got a bit of the colour that you've made your flowers from left over, mix some of that with some glue to stick it back on again, rather than just using glue on its own, because it'll make your joint a lot stronger, because the flower paste is made with the Tylo powder the same as your flower paste is, and it just makes it much stronger. It goes really hard. With flowers like this, because there's so many petals on, if you lose an odd petal, we don't worry too much about it, because nobody's going to see that one's missing when you've got it all together. Possibly on the outer layer they might do, but with the inner layers they're not. With all the best will in the world, we all break things. Right, that's going to come off, so I'm just going to take that off, and I'm going to push that down onto there. That's it. See what I mean about pieces coming off? Happens to the best of us, and no matter how careful you are, there we are. Move some of those petals around. While it's still got the glue on and it's still wet, you can slide it around and adjust things the way you want them to be. Right, so glue on the centre of that, and then this is the one, a dried one with the other layers on, into the centre of there like that, up to the top and over like that. And just attach that round there like that. So then you've got to that stage now. So I'll just put that on one side to start drying while I get onto the next layer. Now I'm going to add the final layer to that one, because I haven't got another one already dried to add the last layer onto. So I'm just going to take half of that, put half of that away, add some more white into that for the last layer. If anybody's got any suggestions about anything that they would like to see me do, then please leave your comments in the comments section below, and don't forget to like as well, and as I said before, don't forget to subscribe as well. My team of subscribers are starting to add up slowly, but the more subscribers I've got and the more likes I've got, the more I can do. Keeps us going, because we need a little bit of encouragement, you know, to bring out new things. And I'm starting to run out of ideas because I don't know what people want to see, and I don't want to do the same as everybody else. There's a lot of talented people on here doing videos on different things, but a lot of people are doing the same thing, like roses and that. I mean, I've done 3 different rose videos, but the difference between mine is that what I've tried to do is to start from making the flower in the early videos right the way through to putting them together in a spray. And on the first one, the rose spray, which is a long video, it's about an hour and a half, I've done everything right from the beginning, making the roses, the leaves, the filler flowers, putting it all together into a large spray, and then finishing off by putting it on a wedding cake dummy that I was doing, to show people how to position, as well as putting a spray together and what you need to think about when you're putting your flowers together into a spray. So if you want to know about that sort of thing, you can go back to my early videos. There's a few videos that I've done sprays. The lily and rose one is another one, to show you how you can mix roses and lilies together, again with the filler flowers in it. I've used the same roses as the rose video because I had some left over. And I'm waffling again, aren't I? Right, bit white fat on the board, and then put some over the cutter. Now yesterday I had to push all the pieces out when I was making these samples. So far I've done quite well. I've only had to push one out, so I haven't had to use my little tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this quite longish to start off with, because I've got 2 large ones to get, and then roll it out to the sides to get the width. Just try that on there. Yes, that's fine, is that? I've got my little tool there just in case. Sorry about that. I usually suck up all sweet when I start with the coughing. That helps me to stop, but then I'll be talking with my mouth full while I'm doing this one, and that's rude. So my mother taught me, if she's up there looking down on me. Right, that's going to stay in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that paste off there, and I'm going to pick the whole cutter up with the petals in it, and then, like I did before, just go around like that, just making sure that you cut right the way through, because this one's a little bit more difficult because it's bigger. Down in the bottom part there's some very tiny bits in there that can stick, so you need to really get on those little pieces at the bottom there. So I might have to take some pieces out of there yet, we'll just see. Right, so if we take that away, yeah, some odd little bits that I need to take out there. So again, like I've done before, if I go in with my little tool and just take those little bits out there. You can't go too far down either because it's solid underneath there, so you've got to remember that I know some of my students are watching these, so, and I know they're itching to get back to classes again, and we'd all love to get back to that stage. And some of them have been messaging me saying how much they're missing it, so let's hope that with the inoculations now that we can try and get back to some kind of normality. if you're watching this later on and we're past the pandemic, just remember what it was like for us at this period in time. It's very tough. And I keep forgetting sometimes when I'm doing these that the people aren't always watching in real time, so there we are. Right, just get that centrepiece out, just get that pad over here. Just be very gentle when you're doing this to make sure you don't get a lot of dents in it. Not that that's going to be seen, because that's going to be underneath your other paste anyway. Just get that, ooh, get that back into there like that. And get that onto there. There we are. Spread that about. Right, we'll just pop that over there while I get the other one cut out. I'm hoping this will come out a little bit easier because the paste is drying a little bit at this stage. So although the weather's changed, we've gone a bit milder now. It's not warm, but it's warmer in here. So you always remember, if you're working in warm temperatures and you're not in a humid climate, that your paste will dry out fairly quickly. So if that's the case, just cut one out at a time and deal with that one before you do the other one. Whoops, there we are. Well done. Came out. You'll find some of my early videos have done more than one video because of the way my camcorder records, and since then I've learned how to edit them now. So some of them I've redone, but all the new ones now I can edit them, put it all into one video, so you don't have to watch more than one video, although it might be convenient for some people to do it that way, especially if there's a lot of content in it like this one. Not quite sure until I've finished how long this video is going to be. That's difficult to tell because I didn't try it out. Normally when I've done demonstrations you have to fit it into a 2-hour demonstration, so then you have to time everything to see how long it's going to take you to make sure you can fit it all in. But I haven't done any demonstrations for a long while because obviously people can't get together like they used to. So there we are. That's that one. Not lost any petals off that one so far. Well done. Give myself a pat on the back. Right. Now if you do have to thin the edges, what I would suggest doing, use a ball tool and roll on the edge of your petals like that. What I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and do it with the big end, see if I can do it without. Yep, that works. Right, I didn't do this last time. I went round all the petals and it took me a heck of a lot longer to do it when I did it that way, so yes, that works a lot better, does that. You've got to take that cut edge off, otherwise they don't look right. As I was told in competition, it doesn't matter how thick the centre of your petals are, as long as the outer part of the petal is thin. Now, I don't like petals thick in the middle. I mean, I've criticised a lot of people for doing that when I've gone to shows, but they win prizes with them, so it must be okay for the judges. Personally, I like to do them as thin as possible to make them look as realistic as possible. Unless you're doing something like an orchid or a lily or something like that that's more fleshy in nature, then you can get away with it. Right, in fact I'm going to go down the centre of those with the small end to give it a bit more curl. That's better. It's a lot quicker than going round all the edges, is that. I should have done that when I did my pieces getting ready, shouldn't I? It's just curling up there. That's why I'm doing it 1/2 at a time, because I was getting a bump there and it'd get a crease in it. It'll spoil the whole thing. Right, that's one done. Anything that's going to make life easier is okay by me. So if you find an easier way of doing it, then use it. Same when I was learning, when I went to class, because I'd already been doing it quite a long time when I went to do my qualifications, and the teacher we had at the time said, well, I'll show them my way, you show them your way, then everybody can decide which is the best way for them, which is a good idea there, because people can learn from each other. And I mean, as you probably found by a lot of demonstrations on here, different people have different ways of doing things, and that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. I mean, there are some very clever people on here, because I've watched a few of the videos to see how people do when before I started doing my videos. And yes, there's some competition on there, some fantastically talented people. There is in most crafts as well, you know. I mean, I've seen a lot of good people. I've seen some bad demonstrations as well, you know. I mean, they're not all good. But you learn to pick and choose between which you prefer and which you don't. Right, so some glue in the centre there. Where's my palette knife? There we are. Lift that onto there, like that. And we've got a petal come off there, look. So I'll just stick that back down again. Just go with my ball tool. There we are. The bigger ones are a little bit more difficult to handle because of the size of the petals, so you just have to persevere a bit with this just to get them in the right position. And then We want some more glue on there. And we'll go back to, oops, dropped it. Go back to that one. The petals are still a bit loose on that because it hasn't dried properly yet. So I just have to keep my fingers underneath it for now. Into the centre, like that. Broken the petal off. This is the tricky bit. This is why it's better to dry your flowers before you get to this stage. There we are. And then turn it over like that. Now, in order to get your petals to spread out a little bit more, if you get them down on your pad, like that, and then you can just spread them out like that. Or, as I say, you can put them into a former. Like that. I've lost one or two petals off there. And then just adjust it to where you want, how open you want it to be. And then what I've got, and this is another medical device that I got from somebody whose wife was a nurse. I have some surgical clamps here, but if a paper clip or anything like that will do. If you just clip it under there like that, hold it in place, then if I put that into there like that, and then just find something that is tall enough on your board just to lean it on. There we are, and leave it like that to dry. Now I've lost some petals off there, so we'll just take them off. There you are. You see, it proves that things do go wrong for me as well as other people, so like I say, you learn by your mistakes. So the next stage is I need some green. I'm not going to show you how to make the leaves because I've already done those. I will dust one because I've got one here to dust. The reason being, you can see how I make leaves on other videos, so I don't need to keep going over that. So I don't want to bore everybody to tears. So what I'm going to do is roll some green paste out now. This is for the calyx on the back of the chrysanthemum. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the smallest cutter out of the set to make the calyx. I'm adding the chrysanthemums for quite a while, so I'm winging this bit a bit. So I'm going to do two because I like it to be quite full. So it wants to be quite thin. Bit thinner. Funny enough, you can tell when you run your fingers over the paste how thick it is. It's something you get used to doing. It's better. Right, again, some white fat on there. Like that. I'm going to cut two out and see how it goes anyway, so that's one. No, I don't think one will be enough on its own. Two. And then check out your little bits of in between, like that. I hope my head wasn't getting in the way there. I always had a habit of things going out of shot because I don't have a camera person to film me doing this, so I kept apologising, but I think I'm sort of getting around that. I'm getting a little bit better of making sure that everything is in sight when I'm doing it, so that you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully. If I'm not, if I do go out of shot, leave a comment in the comments below. I won't be offended. Just say, get your head out of the way or get back in shot, and I will do my best to do as I'm told. Right, for this I'm not going to thin the petals around because I want them to be a little bit thinner. So what I'm going to do is get that off of there onto there. I want these to be quite spindly. So I'm just going to put a bit of glue in the centre there, and then lift that one onto there. And the advantage here is I can see better where the petals are going because I've left them quite thin. That's it. I'm going to turn that over. Bit of glue there, and we'll just put some glue up the petals on these this time. And this one is dry, totally dry, so I can put that straight onto the back of there. So into there like that. Bring that up underneath the flower, and then just stick the calyx down like that. It doesn't have much of a hip underneath it on a chrysanthemum, it's a bit flatter, so unlike a rose I'm not going to put a hip on there. I'm just going to make sure that the paste is right up to the wire like that. Now at this stage, now you can dust them if you want. Now if you are going to dust it, I'm not going to risk it because I'm going to knock all the petals off if I do it on this, but the reason I've done it in layers like that is so that you get the difference in colour. But I will dust the calyx on the back because that wants to be a bit darker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the colour that I've used on my leaves. Where's my brush? There. The colour that I've used for the leaves is Rainforest from Edible Art. So just dust over there with that. There we are. What's that? That's going to fall down. So I'm going to leave this upside down because one of the pieces has fallen off there. So I'm going to leave that to stay upside down to dry. And then, excuse me, phone going off here. Sorry about that, I'm ignoring it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dust all over with the green, all over the leaves. From the edge inwards. Now, rather than just leaving it that, I'm going to put some more powder on my brush, and then I'm going to go down the centre with some more of the colour, the dark green, to make it a little bit darker, and then brush out from the centre, so the centre appears a bit darker than the outer bit. Although they're quite flat, if you just do it all in one colour it can look a bit boring. So and then turn it over, and then just go over the back without putting any more colour on your brush. and just add a little bit of light green to the back. As with all leaves, the backs of the leaves are always a lighter colour than the front of the leaves. Then once you've done that, then we'll varnish it. When I find my varnish brush, I'm done with it. That's it. I've just had hold of it because I just used it. What have I done with it? Lost it, so we'll use that one. That'll do. So then just varnish all over your leaf with the varnish. And what that does, I found, by dusting it first and then varnishing it, it pushes the powder into the veins and makes them stand out a little bit more. I don't know if I've explained this before when I've done on my other videos, but when I was taught how to do them, we used to just steam them. But if you haven't got any gloss, any glaze, what you can do is to steam your leaves, but you have to keep steaming them and let them dry to get the gloss that you want. So you may have to steam them quite a few times to get them as shiny as you want. These are not over shiny when they're dry. That's what they look like. It's just about right, is that, for that type of leaf. But if you wanted something really shiny, like a holly leaf or something like that, then you can put another layer of varnish on and get until you get the shine that you want. If you've got leaves that are dull, then you can either just steam them, or you can mix your glaze with some isopropyl, which is the glaze skin I've just used for cleaning my brush. You need that in a separate bottle to clean your brush, otherwise they go stiff. And then you can mix a half glaze and a quarter glaze, so it's equal parts of glaze and isopropyl for a half glaze, 1 part glaze and 3 parts isopropyl for a quarter glaze. So basically it's what it says on the tin. So those are those parts there. So now I've done that, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to attempt to tape this together to finish it off. Hopefully the back there is dried a little bit so we can get this onto there. So again, with your tape, start it off behind your flower, lower down than you want to start. Nip it in with your nail. That's not sticking because I've got the wrong side. Always check to see which is the stickier side of your Stemtex tape. Otherwise it won't stay on. There we are. So if you tape down a little bit and then push your tape up. The reason I do that is so that I don't break any more petals off. Just keep your tape flat. And then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to add the sprig of leaves in that I've already made there behind it, like that. There we are. So I've got those leaves behind it like that. And there we are, a chrysanthemum with the leaves. Hope you've enjoyed that and you come back for my next video. And like I say,